Welcome to e-Padasala. This is a lecture series for students of Masters in Architecture. Now we will talk about climate change and human influences, how human activity has caused climate change. I would like to go back on Millennium Development Goals, which was formulated around the turn of the millennium, which goals were valid till 2015. In these goals, one of the goals is to ensure environmental sustainability. This environmental sustainability mainly is about climate change. If you talk about other goals, there are also many of them related to climate change. Compact major diseases, if you take that, in the climate change scenario, if the heat increases, mosquitoes will increase. That again is an effect of climate change. So other goals are also related to climate change, including child mortality. And after the end of the Millennium Development Goals, a new set of 17 goals have been formulated under Sustainable Development Goals. In that, the goal number 13 exclusively talk about climate action. Here again, many of the other goals are related to climate change. To start with, no poverty. Again, it's related to climate change. Climate change is often used interchangeably with global warming. But climate change is more broader in terms than global warming. Global warming only talks about temperature, but climate change talks about several other variables in addition to the temperature. And this climate change has been happening in the globe for a long time. These changes can be caused by internal to Earth or external forces. For instance, external forces, variations in sun's intensity. And in more recently, we talk about human activities. Though in this presentation, I talk about how human activities constitute climate change, I will also like to talk about other factors which have been constituting climate change over the decades, over the millennium. For instance, plate tectonics. Over the course of millions of years, the motion of tectonic plates reconfigures global land and ocean areas and generates topography. This can affect both global and local patterns of climate and atmosphere-ocean circulation. Take solar variation. The sun is the ultimate source of all heat in the climate system. On the longest time scales, the sun itself is getting brighter with a higher energy output. This slow change or evolution affects Earth's atmosphere. Even orbital variations. Slight variation in the Earth's orbit leads to changes in the distribution of the abundance of sun's light reaching the Earth's surface. Even the tectonic plate movements like that, the volcanic eruption also can cause climate change. Even in the recent decade, the volcanic eruption in Iceland has disrupted the flight movement in the European countries. Like that, a major volcanic eruption can affect the climate for the next few years by causing climate cooling. Take the instance of 1991 Pinatubo volcanic eruption in the Philippines, which affected climate sustainability. Let's talk about the carbon cycle. The carbon is very essential to life and it moves from one reservoir to another. The carbon can be stored in the forest roots. It can be stored in ocean. It can be stored in atmosphere. It can be stored in geosphere also as fossil fuels, which are trapped deep under the earth for thousands of years. But when we dig out fossil fuels and use that as energy, we are putting back lot of carbon under the earth in the geosphere into the atmosphere. So, more carbon dioxide is now released into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels and less is being fixed. The plants fix carbon, but more and more carbon is released in the atmosphere. The plants find it difficult to fix carbon. This is a carbon cycle. By decomposition, the plants decompose or the animals die, they go into the geosphere and become fossilized. And when the plants, during the photosynthesis, carbon dioxide gets released, and as part of respiration, photosynthesis, the respiration carbon dioxide gets released, and photosynthesis carbon dioxide is absorbed and oxygen gets released. During the industrial use by the factories, the fossil fuels are burned and carbon dioxide gets released. So, the food web and along with the industries, the carbon cycle is a very complex one. Let's see that what is the greenhouse gases. The major greenhouse gases are water vapor. So much so that we can feel the heat when it's very cloudy. When it's very cloudy, the sun's rays come into the atmosphere and reach the earth, and the clouds trap the heat and the heat is not sent out, so it's hot. Carbon dioxide, which is considered as a major greenhouse gas. The fossil fuels consists of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, ozone. Gases such as methane and nitrous oxide have low atmospheric concentration and lifetime, but they have greater warming potential. Methane is 26 times more than carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide almost 270 times more. But in the discourse of climate change, normally we take carbon dioxide because it is the major greenhouse gas. Let's see that what is the greenhouse effect. This is the sun's rays, they reach the earth and some of the rays escape. And they escape. When they escape, this is the atmosphere. The atmosphere consists of greenhouse gases, and this is the layer where the carbon dioxide and other things, clouds are there. And when this greenhouse layer is thickened by use of fossil fuels and more carbon dioxide put into the atmosphere, then more and more the sun's heat coming to the earth and reflected back is trapped. Infrared radiation is emitted from the earth's surface. When they go out, some of them have to escape into the atmosphere, but more and more heat is trapped because of the thickening of the gaseous layer here. Then the globe warms up. Solar radiation passes through the clear atmosphere 343 watts per meter square. Some of the solar radiation is reflected by the atmosphere and Earth's surface, that is 103 watts per meter square. So, the net incoming solar radiation is 240 watts per meter square. Solar energy is absorbed by the Earth's surface and warms it and converted into heat causing emission of long wave infrared radiation back into the atmosphere. Some of the infrared radiation, 240 watts per meter square, passes through the atmosphere and lost into the space. Some of the infrared radiation is absorbed and re-emitted by the greenhouse gas molecules back into the earth, and it warms it. The direct earth is warming of the earth's surface and the troposphere. This entire greenhouse phenomenon mainly happens in the troposphere, the first up to 11 kilometers from the earth's surface. That's the earth's surface gets more heat and infrared radiation is emitted again. The concentration of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that was just 280 parts per million in 1850 has increased to 400 ppm. This 280 ppm was there before the industrialization, and after the period it has risen up to 400 ppm. The effect will be catastrophic when the natural systems stop buffering us from the increased carbon dioxide concentration. In fact, many plants unable to adapt to the increasing heat may die and pump out more and more carbon dioxide. In fact, in the last 100 years, the temperature of the earth has risen by 0.74 degrees Celsius. And any change in the mean climate results in amplified change in extremes. The extremes may exceed tolerable limits both in terms of natural and human systems. For example, the floods that used to happen for once in 100 years and may happen in 50 years or 30 years. That's how the 2015 December flood is also attributed to climate change. When habitats are lost, even people have to move from their place of existence. And earlier we used to talk about war refugees. Because of war, people dislocate from one place to another. Now time has come, we need to talk about climate refugees. The Himalayan glacier melt is considered one of the major aspects of climate change. Billions of people are depending on Himalayas for irrigated agriculture. To start with, mountain regions will risk floods caused by the melting glaciers. Flow in glacial-fed Himalayan rivers such as Kosi, Gandaki, Karnali, Brahmaputra and Ganges will increase. But as the glaciers in the Himalayas have disappeared, the volume of river flow will drastically reduce, leading to droughts. To start with, there may be flooding, and later when glaciers disappear, there will be droughts in a vast majority of the region. Not only India, Nepal, Burma, Afghanistan, Pakistan and even parts of China. The coastline is very much vulnerable to climate change. We have a very large coastline of 7,500 kilometers. Bay of Bengal is cyclone prone, though tsunami is rare. Tsunami may not come again in our lifetime in the Bay of Bengal region, but we can often expect cyclones. We can even expect cyclones like 1964 cyclone that devastated Dhanushkodi in Tamil Nadu. Sea erosion is rampant in mega delta of West Bengal, Bangladesh and coastal areas of Odisha. These are places which are now icons of climate change, just like Maldives. The Maldives, which has a population of 4 lakhs, a group of islands and no place above 3 meters above sea level, may disappear in the next 50 years. Just like that, some of the coastal regions of Odisha and Bangladesh are prone to climate change. This is a picture of Odisha, how the backwaters, this was once the coast, but sea has intruded into the land and there is a vast stretch of backwaters. Some places in the Puri districts of Odisha, in the last 15 years, 15 kilometers have been lost to the sea erosion. That is a significant example of climate change. What are the other vulnerabilities? Apart from glacier melt, sea level rise is estimated every year there is 1.8 millimeter sea level rise and drop in crop yield. Even in the increased carbon dioxide conditions, the crop yield will reduce. Not only the yield, the nutritional factor also will be affected. That will produce less nutritional output. Adverse impact on biodiversity, death of forests. Increase in the severity of the extreme events such as floods, droughts and extreme heat. Groundwater becoming saline and getting depleted. Malnutrition, diarrhea and infectious diseases such as malaria, filaria and skin diseases. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was set up by the United Nations in 1988 and it was charged with scientifically assessing the pertinent information. Scientists around the world, they take the data and carefully assess which are the data which have to be certified as part of climate change. If somebody gives the data that 2015 December floods of Chennai is part of climate change, that data will be carefully assessed to find the veracity of it. In 1992, most countries, including the United States, adopted the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change with the objective of stabilizing greenhouse concentration in the atmosphere at a safe level. Later, as a measure of implementing United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol came into existence in 2005. Developed countries that are part of the protocol committed to specific reductions of greenhouse emissions, and in fact, it was the developed countries which were initially asked to cut down the emissions as part of the Kyoto Protocol because they were the historic emitters. But later, when the Kyoto Protocol ended in 2012, there was great demand by the developed countries to improve the developing economies, that is the emerging economies like India and Brazil. And interestingly, as part of the UNFCCC, which met in the Paris in December 2015, the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, in which even India was a party to it. And even India has agreed to cut down its emissions. And this Paris Agreement has come into existence in 2016. The Kyoto Protocol, what is it? The Kyoto Protocol negotiated in Kyoto, that is in Japan. It was between the industrialized countries to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. Interestingly, US, which was the greatest emitter at that time, was not a party to it. That itself was a fallacy of the Kyoto Protocol. International accords such as Kyoto Protocol are trying to limit the production of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases through imposition of emission controls. The first commitment period of the protocol ended in 2012. The protocol also talked about emission trading, the tradable permit system in which the greenhouse gas emitters can buy-sell permission to emit a certain amount of emissions to other countries. Later, during the end of the Kyoto Protocol period, China and India too were asked to share the burden. A decade ago, in an effort to combat climate change, India has brought out the National Action Plan on Climate Change. Some of the initiatives are National Solar Mission, the Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, National Water Mission, National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Region. Himalayas plays an important role in the climate discourse. National Mission for Green India, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, India being particularly an agrarian country. Some of the aspects of this action plan are protecting the poor and vulnerable section, inclusive and sustainable development, mitigation of greenhouse emissions, mitigation in the sense preventing the emission of greenhouse to as much as possible, because in this disaster management or climate change scenario, you use the word mitigation, prevention, mitigation and adaptation. Prevention means completely remove the hazard, but mitigation is to prevent the hazard to the extent possible. Adaptation in the sense, if we cannot prevent or mitigate a hazard, we adjust to it. That action plan also talks about technologies for both adaptation and mitigation of greenhouse gas. It also talks about engineering new and innovative forms of market and regulatory and voluntary mechanism to promote sustained development. So, who should share the burden of climate change? The rich countries should shoulder the burden of responsibility of global climate change. They have caused the bulk of the problem, and the poor people who are not the cause of the problem, they suffer because of the problem. The wealth in the world is created because of the fossil fuels. The poor too aspire to create the wealth through the same route. So, the argument is that the developing countries, or the most poorest of the countries, should be allowed to use the fossil fuels to develop at least to some extent. Now here I show the pictures of the turning trosso classic green building in Malmö in Sweden. It's a green building where the lights come in the natural way, the air come in the natural way, and the heating cooling system come in the natural way. It was built in such a way that it's highly energy efficient. The Malmö city in Sweden is a boast about going green throughout. Green buildings in Malmö with solar panels on the top of the buildings, and the building themselves with lot of ventilation and also lights coming in. How does Malmö go green? A thriving inspiration of urban sustainability. To be climate neutral by 2020, they aspire to be climate neutral to 2020 and to operate 100% renewable energy by 2030. It invites biking and walking. People prefer biking and walking. Buses are powered by natural gas and biogas. Energy is supplied by solar and wind power system and geothermal heat pumps. For instance, from under the earth, when you send pipes into earth, the city like Malmö, which is extremely cool, they can bring the hot air and circulate it into the building and keep themselves warm. Last, they planted bioremediation, plans to break certain pollutants already available in the soil. And what can we do to combat climate change? We talk about the global level, we talk about the Malmö, and that's a massive scale they have tried to tackle climate change. But as individuals, we can also do our best to tackle climate change. The first thing is that go green, plant trees, plant saplings, and as part of tree planting campaign, normally we go in for shade bearing trees. But the problem is that when you go to some places and plant shade bearing trees, we are forced to do in the public places, because in houses we would not like to have too many shade bearing trees. And in public places there is a problem of sustainability. Who will go and water those plants and wait till they become trees? So sometimes what we plant may disappear in the next 2 or 3 months or disappear within the next week. One new approach is to plant fruit bearing trees. If you plant fruit bearing trees, even in your houses you can plant, or if you plant in others' houses also as part of your tree planting campaign, people will welcome you to do that. And now that our agriculture research progress is very well, that we have hybrid trees, quick fruit bearing trees, so that you can get the best of the varieties. This will be very welcome. Another aspect is that fruit bearing trees also takes care of the nutritional security in poor areas at times of food scarcity. Even if people do not have enough money to buy food, these fruit bearing trees will bear fruits, and to some extent the nutrition security and food security will be ensured. Use less of vehicles. Even in major cities like including Delhi, we have odd number and even number use of vehicles. If one day odd number vehicles can go on road, another day it's the even number. This sort of aspect is also to combat climate change. As such, if you use vehicle less and if you start walking or going on bicycle, we will be healthy, and we will also contribute our might to combat climate change. And even if you have to necessarily use a car, we can do carpooling. We can share, and couple of students or couple of colleagues can travel in the same car. Best still, we can use the public transport, which saves 85% of the carbon dioxide. As I already said, walk as much as possible. It will contribute to your good health. Besides, you will also not waste energy. Above all, you will also contribute to check climate change. Use bicycles. it's not powered by any renewable energy. In some of the best cities like Copenhagen, people use bicycles extensively. What they do is that they ride the bicycle throughout the city, or if they go for a distant place, they take the bicycle to the railway station or metro station or the bus station, and from there they use the public transport. Most people do not use their private cars for their office work. In fact, they use the private cars mostly when they go on the picnic during holidays. They go for some remote places. This checks climate change to a large extent. Apart from that, even Copenhagen has a aspect of having tree curtains between the highways and the places of residence, so that the noise gets reduced in the places of residence, the traffic sound is not heard in the places, and also when you plant good number of trees, they contribute to observe carbon dioxide, acting as carbon sinks. Alternatively, as much as possible, you plant trees or they enjoy the nature. Even the picnic sites they go is that they go to the forest to enjoy the nature. They protect the forest even in the place of the residence, and also the virgin forest, they protect it carefully. We can also use alternative energy like wind and solar energy. Instead of using renewable energy, instead of using fossil fuels, we can use renewable energy like wind and solar energy. Whatever the source of energy, we can use less of electricity. Whenever there is no need of power, whether it's a mobile charger, if the charging is over, if your mobile charger is plugged in, it will use some power. If you are not using a room, you can switch off the lights. If you are not using the television, you can switch off the complete thing, including a stabilizer is used, you can switch it off. Build energy saving buildings. Allow more of sun's light, natural light, allow more air, so that you need not use energy, for lighting, energy for air circulation. And now there is a habit of using packaged drinking water. In fact, many scientists say that packaged drinking water is not all that safe in most conditions. And instead of that, if you use the tap water, if you boil it, in Western countries, tap water is 100% pure. But in our case, tap water, the metro water, may not be 100% pure. Even if the tap water is chlorinated or iodinized and sent to your home, since it's that the water pipelines and the sewerage pipelines run parallel on the streets, there is a possibility of mixing up once in a while. Particularly in the case in our country, we don't have 24-hour water supply. When we have water supply for 2 hours a day or 2 hours every alternative day, and there is the sewerage pipeline, there is continuous flow of sewerage water. When there is low pressure in the water pipeline, that water may enter the water pipeline through weak points. But still, tap water can be used by sending it into a purifier or by boiling it. This saves 99% of the carbon dioxide. Above all, in every aspect, lead a simple life. Our grandfathers did. Our ancestors did. Most of our grandfathers did not hesitate to carry a simple yellow cloth bag, a reusable cloth bag to the market. But our fathers hesitate. We hesitate. And if you are hesitating to carry a yellow cloth bag also, you use a shopper bag, a reusable shopper bag, so that every time you go to the market, you don't come with so many packed goods, so many plastic bags to pack, carrying different goods. You can reuse it, so disposable plastic bags can be eliminated. And as much as possible, do not buy things or use things which are not very much necessary. Only use things which are very essential. By you leading a very simple life, that's the best way to combat climate change. Thank you.